welcome everybody to another webinar in the PsychUp series from the team here at Veritas. It's great to be with you today, and hopefully everybody is coping with the ramifications of COVID-19 well. There certainly are some downsides to it, as we know, from a health perspective for a lot of people, and also from an economic perspective for all of us. However, it is important that we continue to observe the measures that are necessary to get through this as well and as quickly as possible, and also to look at the opportunities, to look at things that we might be able to do a bit differently, what might be the learnings out of some of this, some of the resilience certainly that we can build, hopefully some of the ability to get ourselves organised when we don't have strategies and processes coming at us more directly from the team at work, where they can just pop in next door to you in the office and say, hey, this is what we're doing now. When we're more socially isolated, then often if it's to be, it's up to me, and we need to gauge our own way. But it is important to make sure that we keep well connected with everybody, keep well connected with people in our organisations and our teams, and keep well connected with friends and family via video link-ups, etc., which is really quite important at this time, and get ready to rock and roll again when things are in a much better state and we can get back to life a little more normally as we knew it in the past. So today is all about wrapping up on all things leadership, and the month of April has been our focus on topics in and around leadership in particular. And so throughout the month, what we've covered off on and what various team members at Veritas have covered off on have been things like leading your team through a crisis, looking at the difference between leadership and management, and we'll come back to some of these topics a little later, failing and learning as a leader, which is a very important thing. The great UCLA coach, John Wooden, once said that if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. Now, you don't want to go out of your way to make mistakes, obviously, but when, in particular, you're out of a performance zone and you're in a learning zone, you're getting ready for the next big thing in terms of processes or strategies, and that's the time often to have a crack at new ways of doing things and showing an initiative so that we can grow and develop and transform our teams, our organisations and ourselves, especially ourselves as leaders, so we keep growing and developing. And generally, there is no movement forward without the opportunity to learn. Let's use that phase instead of the word failure, because failure is just purely an emotional response often to something that hasn't worked out. The opportunity to learn can come out of most of those areas, and especially if we have been using failure as a learning opportunity along the way, building on our strengths, learning and developing and taking on board feedback, some of the other things that we'll talk about that are critically important in a leadership position, then we can grow and develop and learn. And certainly it's great to have achievements, it's great to put effort in, and they pop out the other end as an achievement. We can sit back over a nice glass of orange juice or a nice glass of white or red wine and say, oh yeah, look at what I just did and look at what we just did. And it's pretty impressive, that's great, that's fantastic. But that's not always the case. What we've also covered off, obviously, and many people have, is the post-COVID-19 leadership and leading through teams through a crisis. And one of the things I think that really popped out there to me was the fact that even in times of crisis, try not to be a leader of change and dramatic change, and a leader of re-engineering, as we sometimes put it, or restructuring, but rather take an attitude. And what we want to do is we want to be a leader of transformation and growth through these times. We want to lead so that we're not making major changes. We're not doing things incredibly different to the way that we did them before and throw everybody around us into a spin. but where we take a very strategic and a very thoughtful approach to what is happening, what is different. We do a good analysis, a good strategic analysis and assessment of what is happening, and then in a very solution-focused and positive manner, look at what it is that we need to do to help lead our teams and create a setting for our team members to be the best that they can be moving forward through a crisis period, but also then getting ready perhaps to gear up a little and go at a faster pace once we are the other side of that crisis. And I think that's important, because people can at times suffer from what we call the survivor syndrome. It's not just people who may be laid off or made redundant during these times. It's sometimes the people who are left, who, if as leaders we don't handle things well through a crisis, can be left feeling, what's going to happen to me post this? Will I still have a job? Won't I have a job? Will things change so dramatically that we'll be saving money by no longer having offices? We'll all be working from home. We'll only need half the staff we've got, etc. And therefore my role in the organisation, my role in the team might be seen as redundant, and we can help people think themselves into a lather of sweat and anxiety, unfortunate, if we don't lead well and don't lead by example and lead optimistically and at the same time very authentically, stating what we see are the trials and tribulations ahead, what might be some possible derailers for the team, for the organisation, for our ability to thrive as an organisation moving forward, and then deal with those and involve other people in dealing with them. So there's some of the topics that have been covered off in blogs and other things that the Veritas team have done through the Psych Up area of what it is we do here within the organisation. So one of the things I wanted to start with, I guess, is just looking at the area of derailment on our way to great leadership, and how does derailment come about, and do we know what some of the reasons are, and can we actually protect ourselves against that? And we can. The London School of Business and many other business schools have done a lot of research into this, as well as a lot of the anecdotal evidence that many of us would have collected through our own careers, seeing our own path and reflecting upon our own journey and reflecting upon the journey of others who we might know that are in leadership positions, who survived, who did really well, who was able to get through difficult times, who was able to build sustainability in what they did, and didn't just have to become a 3-year leader of change or restructuring and then go on to do that again, because they probably weren't capable, in fact, or back themselves in terms of their own self-efficacy, belief in themselves to be able to do what they need to do to build sustainability into the organisations and the teams that they may have led. Now, one of the derailments, and one of the things that really quite clearly comes out of the research and also out of a lot of the anecdotal chats that I've had with people, is what made us successful as a competent performer, what made us successful in our technical roles, being very good at what we did as a psychologist, as a lawyer, as a construction worker, as someone on the tools, as a plumber or whatever. Being really good at those technical skills that are necessary there doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be successful as a leader. What we need to do is we need to be able to bridge the gap between being a competent performer, great at the technical skills needed to get on and maybe get to a position of supervisor or team leader within an organisation, but then to go to a leader, then to become an effective leader. What we need to do is we need to bridge and grow our skills and transform ourselves from being that competent performer into being that effective leader. And now our task becomes, and our purpose becomes, creating a setting for others to be the best they can be in, building the right cultures in our teams and in our organisation, helping people grow and develop, helping people get the tasks done well, having processes and strategies in place that help people work well together, where people are supporting each other, where people are growing and developing together, where they're affiliative, where they're able to work really effective in a team scenario and not compete with each other or not avoid making decisions because they feel they're going to be hammered or that a manager is going to tap them on the shoulder and say, that's not the way we do things around here, old son. So it really is quite important that if we're not going to derail on our way to great leadership, and then we need to bridge from being a competent performer to being an effective leader. And one of the reasons that leaders can derail is because often a lot of those skills that are necessary to be a competent performer are around task skills. And certainly you need some good people skills as well. But the primary thing often in those lower level jobs when we're just starting out is to be seen and noticed for being great at what you do there, being very good. As a young electrician, being very good as a young lawyer, a young accountant, a young technical person, a young engineer, or whatever it might be. And you're seen as being good at that, and then someone taps you on the shoulder and says, would you like to be a supervisor? Would you like to be a team leader? And so we can grow and develop through that. And often we have got those opportunities because we've been good at our tasks and people have spotted us and said, wow, that person's good at what they do. But then effective leadership, creating a setting for others to be the best that they can be, is about now bridging to make sure that with our time and energy as a leader, we are now still spending time assisting and helping people to get the task done well. It's not about us getting the task done well, other than being and showing great leadership. But it is about helping others to get the task done well. So we produce great products, we produce great services, whatever our organisation, the purpose and the meaning and the vision of our organisation is about, that we help people have structures, processes, techniques and everything in place that can allow them to do that. But at the same time now, what we need to do is we need to do spend a good amount of time and energy in being with people, and that is helping grow a humanistic and encouraging culture for our people where people do support each other. They show interest in each other's growth and development, not just being the best, not just competing with each other or looking for power plays, and that we model that we model interest in the growth and development of others, not just reaching our quarterly or our monthly financial target. Because we can do that and basically tell people to hell with you, we're just going to work you to death. And you know, if you can't take the heat in the engine room, we'll get rid of you and we'll replace you with someone that can. But what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to create a culture where a humanistic and encouraging approach to everything. It's not a wimpish approach. We can still have really difficult and hard discussions about someone whose performance might not be up to scratch. It doesn't mean to say that we're all touchy-feely with each other and having group hugs. You know, they can be appropriate at times when something goes really well. But it just means that we do manage by walking around. We show appreciation. We show gratitude when people have done things. We point out to people on a regular basis how their piece of what they're doing in this puzzle, how they are them being a cog in the system, they're an important cog. And basically, I think one of the things that good leaders recognise is that everything is a system. Everything in life is a system. Our body is a system. Our brain is a system. Our households are systems. Our workplaces are systems. Teams are systems. Mechanical team systems, bottling plants are systems. And there are cogs in those systems. There are different aspects to those systems, whether they're human systems or more mechanical systems. And when those cogs are working in unison and working well, generally you get very effective outcomes. Productivity is high and things work really quite well. But when one of those cogs speeds up or slows down too much, then it can throw the whole system out. And the system often doesn't work well. And so when the cogs in the system are working well, when people are working really well together and doing just the little things at times that really matter, pay them off. Barbara Fredrickson out of the US did a lot of research into what she called positivity, and she wrote a book called Positivity, but don't bother to read it because it is a bit more of an academic read, and to be honest, it's a little boring, but the substance of it is fantastic. And the research that she's done is something that we can all learn through. And basically what she found, and this is very simplistically put, but it's kind of all we need to know, is that when you want to help people grow and develop, and you want to get the best out of people, when you want people to build their own self-efficacy, their belief in themselves to do what it is that they need to do to get through life well, give them 3 pats on the back for every kick in the butt that you give them. And by that I mean point out 3 things that they're doing well for every time that you might have to have a session of constructive feedback with them. Look, this isn't working too well. I just wanted to sit down with you and work out what we can do about this particular issue that's happening. And you do that, obviously, very respectful. But we need to make sure that we are catching people being good. One of the greatest gifts that we can give our children is helping them build their high level of self-efficacy, belief in themselves to do what it is that they need to do to get through life. And you don't build that in children by mollycoddling them. You don't build that in children by disempowering them and, all the time telling them what to do, how to do it, and stopping them falling over. Every now and then you need to let them make mistakes. You need to let them go. You need to work through them and help educate them why that thing didn't work. And every now and then, and quite often, hopefully, you pick them up and give them a hug and say, I love you dearly. But what I really want to point out today was when you put effort into that piece of homework, or when you put effort into helping your mum, that just means so much. Mum was so thrilled when you helped her wipe up the dishes, or when you helped Dad wipe up the dishes, and when you help whatever it might have been around the house. But just simple things like that are really very important. We mustn't overlook them. Now, one of the other things that has become very clear, and this is, I guess, on my journey through life in many different roles of leadership now with the companies that we have built up over time and been involved with over time. And as consultants, one of the things that sometimes does your head in a little is you're not there every day and you don't get to share everything with everybody. But one of the things about being an external consultant is you get to see lots of companies. You get to work with lots of people, lots of wonderful people at times. And you get to see what great leadership is all about. And at times you sit back and think, I couldn't have done that. And as a consultant, even though you're there as an expert in a particular area or whatever, you know that someone's leadership skills in terms of showing great leadership in helping create that setting for others to be the best that they can be, getting the task done, interacting well with each other and people is pretty impressive. And if only we could clone some of those leaders, but they are out there and we can learn from feedback and admiring them rather than, I guess, getting a little put out rather when someone does something a little bit better than us. But what I've noticed in most of those leaders, and it comes out of the research by Cecile de Vries and Peter Fuda here in Sydney when they were doing their PhDs as well, is that personal transformation is really very important in those people who go on to transform cultures, to transform organisations and to become great leaders and to show great leadership in building sustainability into organisations. And when they leave, leaving that car, and this is just metaphorically speaking, in really great running order, so that people can take it and later, if they want to change the Juco colour, they want to change the wheels on it, they want to change the steering from right hand to left hand, they can do all of that. They might even, build a new model, but they've got a really neat functioning model. And that's how someone once explained from a metaphorical perspective what a legacy and leaving a legacy as a great leader was all about and what it meant to them. Now, there is a model, and it's a very, very simple model, and it's what we tend to use in Veritas, and we tend to use it when we're running a lot of our workshops in culture enhancement or leadership development. And it's a very simple model, but I think as Steve Jobs and other people who've been over after learning, been able to assist organisations to go on to achieve great things, as many of them I think would ascertain, is keep it as simple as possible. In the background, what you're doing, it can be complicated, and a lot of it is. But when you're up front, when you're doing things, and when you're looking at processes, keep it as simple as possible. If you've got a strategic plan, don't have it go over 130 pages. Put it on one page so your team members can see it and see exactly where the vision is, where true north is, and then bits and pieces of how we're going to get there, the what, why, where and how, of where we're going and how we're going to get there, etc. So they can take it in, absorb it, and in one picture, looking at it, kind of get the bigger picture. Now, the AAA model of growth and transformation really is awareness, acceptance, and action planning. And it's as simple as that. When we want to be better at what we're doing, when we want to grow, get into a continued scenario of growth and transformation, because we're always transforming, and we're either transforming in a positive or not so positive manner. And if we want to transform in a positive manner, especially as a leader, but in any aspects of our life, then the AAA model is really useful. Gain awareness. What is happening? Where am I at now? Where am I at now? What is going on? What's the reality? So that we reality test well, what is happening now, and then make sure we go from awareness to acceptance. I get it. I see what is happening. I understand it. I've dropped my defensiveness around what might not be working, and I'm now ready to do something about being better at what I'm doing. And then, and only then, are we really ready to go to action planning. So we need that awareness, that acceptance, and then action planning. And I think often in a leadership role, some of that basic common sense doesn't get taken into common practice because we just don't sit back and use reflective practice and every now and then reflect upon how am I going. And many leaders still shy away from feedback, and especially 360-degree feedback. And I think as we often use and we often hear in the elite sporting context, because a lot of what Veritas does is work with elite sporting teams and elite sports people, is that feedback is the breakfast of champions. And it's a nice little saying, but I think it's a truism that feedback really is, we're going to go on a journey of transformation, of being the best that we can be, of enabling ourselves for sustainable success, week after week, month after month, year after year, and there'll be pitfalls in it. It's always a sore tooth. We're going, well, whoops, something didn't work out. We're going, well, whoops, something didn't work out. We're going, well, whoops, something didn't work out. That's just the way it is in Hollywood. But we need to really make sure there that we are getting feedback, and awareness and acceptance is all part of that feedback loop. And then let's get into the action planning, and then let's go out and perform. Let's do what it is that we want to do a bit differently to see how it works. And then we go from, if you like, a performance zone, we're out there, we're doing it, into what we call the learning zone. And the learning zone is where we gain more awareness and acceptance and reflection upon what's working, what's not working. Then we practice a bit, and then we go back out and perform again. Now, when you look at high-performing sports teams and high-performing individual sportsmen and women, that's exactly what they do, and they do it on a regular basis. And the research out of Berkeley universities in the United States and others show that that is how adults learn. If they put themselves into a performance zone, give it their very best shot to do the best that they can do now, and then come back out into a reflection zone, a learning zone, and learn, reflect upon what's working, what's not working, get the feedback, do some practicing if they need to, and then go back out and perform. And when they do that regularly is when generally the rate of transformation and the consolidation of new learnt skills becomes habitual. And that's what we're looking for. And that's what leaders, I think, need to understand, is that it's not just about being out there performing. Oh, maybe I better look at ways I could do something different. I got a bit of feedback then, and it didn't seem to work terribly well. What can I do about it? But it's when they're out there performing, learning, performing, reflecting, performing, learning, performing, learning, practicing, performing. And when we get into that loop, if we get into that loop and we're open to that loop, it does a few things. One, it means that we're probably going to be able to show the greatest degree of constructive, positive leadership that we can. But what we also do is we show authenticity to others, that we're not invincible, that we don't know it all. And what we're modelling for others is you need to learn as you go. If you want to be great at what you do, whether it's as a competent performer, as a manager or a leader, then you need to go into a performance zone, learning zone scenario. And the best way to do that with people is obviously model it for them. When they see us doing it, when they actually see it being played out, and it's not just talk, then hopefully they're more likely to do it if they see the benefits that are coming from our own transformation as a leader and how that might be playing out in the team, in the culture in the organisation, so that people can be the best that they can be, our effectiveness, our products are great, our whatever we're there to do is working as well as it possibly can. And we need to do that within our own staff teams and the organisation as a whole at times. As a leader, is to make sure that we create a setting where people can go from performance zone to learning zone looping regularly. And that's when you see organisations actually get the best outcomes that they can. And a recent scenario, I was working a while ago doing some work with an engineering, a large division of an engineering company. And this division had a net profit double that of any other division. And it was because of not just what they did, but how they did it and the leadership that was there. And I'll share some other things with you in a minute. But the first thing to realise there is the leadership was there for the greater good. The purpose that the leadership within this particular division, their purpose was to achieve goals, no doubt about it. And more than that was to achieve meaningful goals. And in that, and more than that, and linked to that, was contribution to others, contribution to everybody in the team, contribution to people that they might need to partner with to get jobs done, contribution to the community that they were doing the work for. This sense of purpose went over achieving goals, making sure that those goals were meaningful pursuits for everybody. How could we put meaning and achievement into that for everybody and relevance? And then making sure that there was a focus and a recognition of the contribution to others. It was not just about me, and it was not just about our team, and it was not just about our company. It was the role that we were playing in a greater system, which was a community system or the national system. And I think that was an incredible learning, that you can do things really well. You can be there for the greater good and still make lots of money and still be very successful from a financial position. And I think also what that means is generally that means that you're creating, as a leader, a model of sustainability. And that's exactly what this group had done. Okay, so just moving on from that then, we heard in one of the podcasts, I think during the month, 10 tips on being a better leader. And I thought that I'd just go over those today very quickly and just add a little bit of my own reflection into some of those. And well done, Rachel, for putting this together. But what Rachel came up with was, in terms of showing great leadership, is that the leader needs to be passionate, enthusiastic, and have a positive attitude towards things. And I think that's very true. And you need as a leader to be an energy injector, not an energy vampire. You don't have to be the most gregarious person in the group. In fact, many, many very good, sound leaders who have led very successful organisations and successful people in those organisations have been introverts, not extroverts. So they're not the gregarious people that are out there always shaking hands and cuddling babies, etc. They are the people that can be very thoughtful. They can take the background at times. Every now and then they'll need to come out and talk about where we're heading and what is happening. And so they can be very energising, but they're often energising in the solid foundation and the manner in which they go about themselves in a very reliable and steady fashion, and showing that interest that we talked about earlier in others through a humanistic and encouraging approach to their personal interactions with team members and the team as a whole. Now, being passionate about something is very interesting. And someone once said to me, and hopefully with a real sense of well-being and well-meaning rather, be careful, you can become a passionate idiot. And I didn't really get what they were saying until I had a look at some of the psychological research behind passion. And it turns out there are two definite types of passion. The first type is harmonious passion, and that is where we are really passionate about something. We work hard to achieve something that we think is a meaningful set of goals. We feel that there's a contribution to others. It overall fits into our work life integration of what we want to achieve, and we're really passionate about something, and it builds on a reason why we're doing something. And that passion is there to really do the best that we can at this, because we really believe it's important at the end of the day. The other type of passion that actually can achieve very little and can be really quite destructive in well-being and outcome in terms of performance in the end of the day is what's known as obsessive passion. And that is where people become really very obsessed on something because it means that it's going to make them look very good. They're going to get known as a great leader rather than instituting great leadership, for example, is the attitude towards that. And there is a massive need to seek approval from others for doing something really great. Now, in the short term, that can work okay. But what it does is it brings a lot of stress on the individual and a lot of stress on others. And it's been shown in a lot of research, both in the sporting context and in organisations generally, that it can be a real derailer. So passion is not always a constructive thing. It's how we direct that passion and why we are sensing that passion and what we want to do with that passion and the manner in which we direct it and how we incorporate people in our journey forward with that passion to achieve something, and what the end outcome is. And it's got to be bigger than just us, unless, we're on a bit of a narcissistic path of it's about me, and I mean, that's a totally different type of leadership. You can be successful through doing all sorts of things that aren't necessarily going to build sustainability. And a lot of people who do have those narcissistic traits, not necessarily a narcissistic personality disorder, but narcissistic traits, are very bright, and they can achieve sporadic things that are really quite good and quite great at times. But some of the deluge that they leave behind in terms of the impact on resources and the impact on human beings can be quite catastrophic, and they often only exist in scenarios for 3 to 5 years and then are moved on. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not going to waste much time talking about that today. You need to be optimistic with a realistic bent, and I think that's great. We do need to be realistic and optimistic and with a realistic bent. And optimism that is real is not I can jump multiple stories at a single bound. I don't have a Superman cape on, and I don't believe I need to have that on. But optimism is, once again, energy injecting, not energy vampiring within our teams. If we're too pessimistic, that won't work. No, we can't do this. No, that's not the way we do things around here. And we're forever coming on with those inhibiting words and inhibiting processes and inhibiting feedback for others, then growth and opportunity doesn't succeed, and we won't build, and we won't become a facilitator. We'll become an inhibitor as a leader, and that's not what we need in a great, in showing great leadership. And this is the point I was getting at, the next point around understanding our own leadership style. I think it is so important. Make sure that we get feedback, be open to feedback, and show others that we're open to feedback. When people are giving us feedback, don't go straight in defensiveness. Yes, but don't you understand? Things are so busy now. Don't you understand that things are really changing and we're in dire straits at the moment? But listen, and listen with an eagerness that says, tell me more. I want to hear you out. I might not agree with you at the end of the day, and I might not make any changes, but I might. This could be very useful for me. So using phrases when someone comes to us with some feedback that might be a bit jarring for us is to say, well, tell me a bit more about that. Why are you feeling like that? What are you observing? What's actually happening? And then, so actually be with the person in terms of what are they observing there, because hopefully they're trying to be very helpful for you, and then look at doing, okay, well, what would be useful for you if I did things differently, or what from a leadership perspective do you think I might be able to go about myself somewhat differently to get better outcomes in terms of what you're observing, especially if it's someone that we can believe is objective and humanistic in the reasons why they're approaching us and wanting us to grow and develop and be better. Communicating effectively and often as a leader is just really important, and that's, as I said earlier, is one of the things just to reflect upon is be a facilitator, be an optimist, be involved in growth, point out what people are doing well, and then point out what might still need to be done. But point out 3 areas, for example, where things are going well, and then one area that we might still need, that you still might need a lot more time and energy and resource might need to be put into, and teams might need to get onto to make sure that those systems or those strategies are working a lot more effectively and better for the bigger picture and for the team as a whole. Become friends with failure, and this is around Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset. And what Carol Dweck found, obviously, was that when we approach failure from a sense of what can I learn and how can I grow from this, we don't fear it. And also what we do is we keep our self-efficacy or our self-regard high. When we have a fixed mindset, that is more around, I'm really bright, I'm ultra experienced and ultra smart, and that's why I got the job as a leader. And then what happens at times is when things go wrong, we start to question ourselves, maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was. I knew I was faking things a bit, but ooh, this is coming back to bite me now. And we can stop persevering. We know from the research, once again, and from our own anecdotal evidence in working with people, that people who have a fixed mindset, I'm only doing well because I'm really bright and smart, tend not to persevere when things don't go their way, as well as people who have a growth mindset. I want to get it done. I want to get it done well, but every now and then I'll trip up a little. What can I learn from it? And also built into that is that when someone does something better in our minds than we've done it ourselves, people with a growth mindset don't get defensive. They get excited. And the reason they get excited is they say, how can I do that? What can I learn from that? What the hell did that person do? How do they go about themselves? What behind that? I might be able to ask them some questions and get some insights into what led them to doing it that way, or saying it that way, or having that process in place. And it's a great way to learn as a leader or at any time in our career, obviously. Embrace feedback. We've already spoken about that a lot. It just really is one of those things that, from a common sense perspective, it's not enough to talk about. It's not enough to have awareness and acceptance around it. We need to action it, and we need to make sure that we do embrace it and look for it and ask for it as a leader, not just give it to others, which is great, but also it means that others can hopefully support us in our leadership role by pointing out some things that we're doing really well, good on you, and things that we might be able to do in their mind, do better. show rather than tell. I don't think that needs any more explanation. That is do. And I think there's a lot of adages around. I mean, some very bright and very successful people have said some wonderful things, and we often put them down as little sayings. But I just want you to, I'm just going to go through this one with you, because this is one of the ones that I often reflect upon, because I think it is so important. And this is from one of the, who I believe was a very successful past president of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. And he talks about the difference between really great leadership and critics. And what he wrote down was, is this: it is not the critic who counts, not the person who points out how the strong person stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strived valiantly, who errs, who comes again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends themselves in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if they fail, at least fails by daring greatly. I just think it sums up what great leadership needs to be all about. And I think it's something that many of the reporters who are running the news for us, either print news, visual news through the TV, etc., could well be aware of in the way that they delivered questions. It's easy to be a critic. It's easy to sit back. It's easy to stand or sit in front of a microphone and have a crack at people and point out what's not going well. And we need a bit of that. If it's done constructively, we need some of that. But as Carol Dweck says, give people 3 pats on the back for every kick in the butt you give them. But what some of these critics do around us, and what we can unfortunately become as a critic if we're inhibiting and not facilitating in a leadership role, is we can become that energy, we can become that star critic. Here he goes again. Here she goes again, always pointing out what isn't working, what hasn't happened, what I haven't done well, putting red crosses through something I may have written. But where are the ticks? Where's the pat on the back? Where's the arm across the shoulder saying, well done, mate, thanks very much for staying back the other night and helping out a couple of the team members there. I know they really appreciate it, and gee, some good work was done. So it's the man in the ring. It's the person in the ring, not the critic on the side yelling out about what the person in the ring is doing wrong. Yes, we need a support person out there often, but not from a perpetual criticism perspective. So be the man in the ring, the person in the ring, woman in the ring, not the critic on the edge of the ring. Encourage personal and professional growth, and this is, this is what John Wooden did well. He won 10 out of 12 years, as some of you would know, the championships at UCLA. But he, with his pyramid of success and the way that he went about coaching and teaching, because he was a great teacher as well, encouraged both professional growth and personal growth. And because he wanted to grow and help people grow the whole person. And that's when we get the best bang for our buck. I mean, that's when we can do great things and show great leadership in our personal life, in our community life, as well as in our organisational life. I would encourage everybody to read some of the works of John Wooden, and at least to look at his pyramid of success, which came out of 43 years of his leadership in showing what I say, some of the greatest leadership that I've ever come across in encouraging personal and professional growth, both in himself but in others. Fantastic role model, as it said, the next point I wanted to go over with you, and that is leaders need to be a role model, and we need to lead by example. The other thing, of course, is, and I think this is overall, and it kind of fits into everything I've been saying, is as a leader to prioritise time and energy into developing and helping build and creating a setting that encompasses a healthy, constructive culture, both within the team and the organisation. Culture is not about, once again, having group hugs. It's not about having little rituals where every now and then we have Friday night drinks and a happy hour. Culture is much, much deeper than that. Culture is about having styles in place, norms, behavioural ways in place, the way we go about ourselves here, the way we do things, the way we get tasks done, and the way that we interact with each other from a constructive perspective, being achievement, self-actualising, humanistic, encouraging, and affiliative focused in the way that we go about it. And that can play out in a million different pieces of behaviour. We don't have to clone ourselves. But if we become passive defensive and we're just looking after our safety, we know that if we stick our head up, if we're not approval seeking, if we're not conventional and avoiding making decisions, not being dependent on others to make decisions, but if we make too many ourselves, we'll get into too much trouble. Then we will go into a state of what we call passive dependency. And that is where we just start to look after our safety. And then there's the other side of that, which is an aggressive defensive culture where we use power, oppositional behaviour, competitive behaviours, trying to be perfectionistic all the time so we'll never get it wrong and no one can have a crack at us. And that can be very tiring and very wearing. And that's the sort of culture, when you have that aggressive defensive culture, that can be very successful at times and then ridiculously unsuccessful very quickly when things implode for various reasons. But a constructive culture, what we're doing as a leader is we're helping form structures, processes, strategic implementation of the way we go about ourselves, and meaning and goals that are orientated at achieving what it is that we're there to achieve, and doing that as well as we possibly can. But in doing it through the involvement and the growth and the development of people and our teams who can work really effectively together, so that the cogs in those systems, those teams that we have set up, people work well together. They can have robust discussion. They can feel vulnerable. They can make mistakes and people won't beat them up, they'll help them out. And they can have robust discussions, though, around, I think this is the way to do it. Well, yep, okay, tell me more about that. Yeah, I've heard you out, but I still think if we go down that way, we could hit this hurdle. What I was thinking of is we need to head this way, and we can have quite robust discussion about the facts of things. And then obviously what we need to do is we need to be committed, and we need people to be committed and build a commitment towards what the goals are and what we are there to do, and then to take accountability for those, to take accountability for their own performance and their own movement towards it in achieving the goals and bringing people with them and keeping others accountable. And then when we know, I think that we are instituting great leadership is when teams and individuals take on the purpose of the bigger goal, not just their own purpose of being there, of earning a few dollars or whatever, but they are really melded to the purpose, the goals, the meaning and the contribution that meeting the team goals, meeting the organisation goals will bring, and realising that we all benefit if we meet those goals. So that's my overview on leadership, and I just wanted to share some of those learnings with you on my journey through leadership. And believe me, it has been a journey where I have learnt and still are learning so much from others. I learn from other people who've had more experience than me. I learn from people who are older than me. There's not many, but there's a few, and who've been doing it longer than I have. But I also learn just as much from people who've been doing it at a far lesser time and are much, much younger than me. I learn modern ways of doing things. I learn ways of doing things that are really so helpful that years ago we would have done quite differently, but now have moved on. And some of these young folk who are showing great leadership, and some are in leadership positions and others aren't. And that's the other point, just before I go, is that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been part of my own leadership journey, is that everybody can be, as those American military people wrote in the book Spark, everybody can be a spark, everybody can be a leader. And when it's your opportunity to speak up, you don't have to, and to do something from a leadership perspective that shows good leadership. Don't wait until you've got leader or manager in your title. Step up and have a crack. Have your say. Put something forward. Do something without getting approval from someone else and seeing what happens there. Okay. All the very best to everybody. I hope everybody makes the most of the opportunities in the limited form that they might be, but make the most of the scenario that we're in. Give yourself a pat on the back for doing the right thing through this period of isolating, etc. It's important that we learn as a system that if we do the right thing as individuals in the system, then the system can benefit, and hopefully we'll be back out there going at, a normal pace that we might go out doing a lot more of the things that we like, both from a social and an organisational perspective, and getting our economy kick-started again and moving in the right direction as soon as possible. So good leadership to all, and that ends the PsycUp series for this month. Take care, everybody. Thank you for joining us.